Field Protection Grant for the National Park Service to do a project on Palmito Ranch Battlefield, which I'll explain. The first principal investigator is Dr. Soyun Park, which is sitting right there. Michael Ross, her
research assistant and general grunt.
yeah, and Olivia Ross back there on the camera. But anyhow, I kind of want to put into perspective Palmito Ranch Battlefield and the National Historic Landmark Program. A lot of people don't realize and don't separate National Historic Landmark from the National Register. There are only 2,500, just under 3,000 National Historic Landmarks in the country. There are only 46 National Historic Landmarks in Texas. Cameron County is the only other county in Texas that has more than one National Historic Landmark. We have 4. That's Palo Alto, Resaca de Palma, Fort Brown, and Palmito Ranch. So between Palmito Ranch and Fort Brown, we have 2 Civil War national, although Fort Brown was also Mexican War, as well as y'all know. I just, you know, it's a pretty big thing to be a National Historic Landmark, and it provides a lot of protection, a lot more protection under the National Historic Preservation Act. So if there's any federal action or anything, any federal action that could possibly impact a National Historic Landmark, it's usually avoided. Not always, but it's usually, but you go through a big process and you can get some mitigation. So that's why it's important that these and y'all know the way I feel about, you know, we should preserve these sites. I feel, and y'all know, that the future, sustainable future for this is a joint heritage and ecotourism down there. I think that is the way it should be. That's the most sustainable economic future engine for us to move forward. And it preserves our history, our unique heritage. You know, somewhere along the line, Brownsville received the moniker of the second most historic city in Texas. I think this is crazy because we have a very unique and distinctive history here, unlike any other, with our architectural resources of downtown, the Civil War, and of course the Mexican War. There's nowhere else in the United States that you have this history, and we need to emphasize that, you know, and we can. I do, you know. That's why it's important to preserve these sites before it's too late, as it could be too late. But then it's not just Brownsville, and it's not just Cameron County, it's the whole. When you're looking at the Civil War, the trail, we have Russ Cronic back here, who his program has put together the Civil War Trail, which I think all of us have been a part of that, getting that Civil War Trail up and running. I've seen all y'all faces at the meetings. We have something here very important, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but we need to go out and reach to other people within our community and get more community behind us for this effort. And at that, I'll turn it over to Mike.
So, as Rolando said, we are indeed preaching to the choir here, but I think that's okay. This is a good thing. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about the American Battlefield Protection Program. Just a brief overview. I would encourage anyone who's unfamiliar with it to go to the National Park Service website and look at it. They have the actual documentation, so you can see kind of the process by which that goes. So let's get started. So from this first statement here, the ABPP is to assist citizens, public and private institutions, and governments at all levels in planning, interpreting, and protecting sites where historic battles were fought on American soil. What I think is really interesting here is that sites like Gettysburg, Shiloh, even though Manassas has been a prime example of one that's been challenged, these sites are part of the shared identity that we as Americans have. And so the ABPP works to make sure that those things are available for perpetuity, essentially, for us to be able to interpret and understand the things that shape our country, okay? So, the American Battlefield Protection Program promotes the preservation of significant historic battlefields associated with wars on American soil. So there in and of itself, it's a little bit unique. We're not looking at wars that happen other places, we're looking at wars that happen here. The ABPP focuses primarily on land use, cultural resources, and site management, planning, and public education. So from a landscape architectural perspective, this is right up our alley. And I think the program is designed in such a way that it allows for a multidisciplinary approach. So as everyone's sitting around the room and everyone knows each other, we all kind of come from different backgrounds, but we all share this interest in this program. So let's get on to this part here. So the ABPP provides professional assistance to individuals, groups, organizations, or governments interested in preserving historic battlefield land and sites associated with battles. The ABPP awards grants for preservation projects at historic battlefields and to state and local governments seeking to acquire battlefield land. And the result of that is that we end up with a public-private partnership. That public-private partnership increases, I think, overall people's general awareness across different disciplines and within the community. And it also saves taxpayers money, which, as we know, it comes down to dollars, and that's a key thing. I think the other thing, again, coming from a landscape architectural perspective or a design perspective, is that these are that you end up with locally relevant and contextually appropriate solutions to battlefield preservation. Brownsville and Palmito are not the same thing as Shiloh or Appomattox or any of these other sites, right? This is a contextually relevant place here, right? The idea that the landscape, right, the landform changes and shapes the way that battle takes place, right? Tomaleep scrub is not something you just march across a big flat open cornfield or wheat field. So I think the idea that these solutions come about from local efforts makes a big difference as opposed to just like completely top-down preservation. Okay, so then we get into the idea that the ABPP assesses and preserves the needs of these sites. So just a little bit about it, right? The committee was initially created by the Secretary of the Interior in 1991. In 1996, Congress signed into law the American Battlefield Protection Act, and it was officially authorized. I think one of the things I think is really interesting is that it has surveyed more than 650 battlefields in 16 wars, and that it was awarded over 513 battlefield planning grants, and therefore helped protect 100 battlefields and 42 sites and territories. So again, it's pretty comprehensive as far as its overall reach. All right. In 1998, ABPP battlefield acquisition grants helped preserve land at 75 Civil War battlefields in 16 states. This is a little touchy. And then I think one of the other things that I wanted to mention here is kind of how, we already know that it does do these grants, but also we have this little last part here about utilizing military terrain analysis. This was an interesting change in the way that we do inventory analysis from our standpoint. And the reason I want to touch on that is that using military terrain analysis means that landform becomes even more significant, right? So you look at that battlefield site and you want to determine whether or not there were points of egress in and out of the battlefield that shapes the way the battle takes place. You want to look at whether or not there are fire lines that are still preserved. The reason this matters when we look at preserving a battlefield site is that if we end up with something that is contextually eliminated, i.e., let's say it turns into a parking lot, you have now flattened the landform, you have no idea. So even if you protect the space or put up a placard, it doesn't have the impact for a visitor to go there and see this space, right? It's like, okay, this is where this battle took place. But if you go there today, right, and if some of you want to go out there, most of you probably already been, those of you who haven't, please go out there. You get a real sense for how that would have felt how it would have smelled, how it would have been. Granted, there's no guns going off and that sort of thing, but you can put it into context. If you read about the battle, you can see, okay, well, here's Palmito Hill, or here's this element or that element, and that shaped the way this battle took place. It shaped the way it happened. So from a student of history's perspective, it makes a much more rich experience than just a placard on a wall or in a parking lot. And then there's some elements that we had to consider as we go through this sort of thing. Like, what defines battlefield for the ABPP program? So a battle has to, for it to be a battlefield, it has to be considered a war or conflict between two recognized military forces, culturally recognized military forces. So civil unrest issues don't qualify. So even if you had like a Union uprising and the federal troops come in and 200 people die, that doesn't follow into a battlefield site. So that's a whole other set of preservation issues. This one, we have a really clear definition about what it is, and it really fits nicely with what we do. Again, what relevant landscape features, kind of what I spoke about earlier, right? How do these landforms shape the way that battle took place, and are they present today? Can we identify them? Can they be understood? What is possible for visitor to experience the site in a contextually relevant way? Again, I think, you know, we're very fortunate because we have the Wildlife Refuge, and we have some of these other things that help keep some of that, like the surrounding area, relevant to the way the battlefield would have been experienced. Again, if you have an issue, let's say, with view sheds will be everything you kind of see around the space. If it becomes all high-rises and skyscrapers and condos, it changes the experience that the visitor has when they go there. So those are the kinds of things that we consider, and then those determinations help the granting committees determine whether or not the site is worth saving. In some cases, we've lost sites and they will be a placard on the wall. And then lastly, I would just say, you know, the goal is to preserve history. And I think, again, we have a shared common history. Regardless of like our cultural identities and everything else, there is this kind of idea about a history that shapes, you know, America from, say, the Revolution onward. And that these things are relevant to kind of all people. And again, here in Brownsville, we have cultural communities that share both sides of that conflict, and they share both sides of those sorts of things. We had this discussion before we got started about this was a true civil war even here. And the idea that, again, like the Trans-Mississippi is not the same thing as what you see in the eastern United States as far as the Civil War and how that takes place. And that story is relevant to all the students who go to school here in Brownsville. It's relevant to all the students across Texas. It's relevant to graduate students who are in their second careers and didn't even know this battlefield existed. This is an amazing thing, and I think we're really fortunate to have this program. And again, I feel like you guys already know all this. So, but there you have it. So that's the ABPP. And now I think so. You got your part.
Before I get started, I wanted to express my gratitude to everybody here for coming. We are really excited about this project, and then without your support, it would be impossible to conduct this project. So I really appreciate it. And so, my stress enough about the importance of the history, particularly in the context of these local communities and the landscape. So, what I'm going to talk today will be what kind of effort has been done in this area. So before we got the grant, we actually looked up some of those previous work and efforts to preserve this area, and then realized that after maybe since 1997, there is a several efforts going on. So the Civil War in Texas, the output of the first project was to provide some maps and just a Brigadier General died. So I did building from the Friends of Texas Historical Commission. And then in 2000, there is a research and project about how to identify core areas where the actual battle actions and movement was taking place. So that was actually done by, I guess, the Brownsville Community Foundation. And then in about 10 years later, there is another project that was focused on the inventory of the Palmito Ranch Battle and the preservation. So that there was some workshop, something similar like this, but more like engaging with the community members years ago. So in the ABPP program, there is a really strong interest to preserve this particular landscape and battlefield areas. So we were able to propose a plan for moving the National Register. So as you heard before, there is some features, actually physical features that is listed in the National Register. The features, but we wanted to expand a little bit more to register the areas to the National Register of Historic Places. So the basic ideas was to seek to include more than 3,400 additional acres of the battlefield to a National Register of Historic Places, in addition to the existing NIHP, which was listed in 1993, and then after 4 years, there is a National Historic Landmark designated for the overground and things like that. So basically, the map actually shows the entire stretch of those proposed area. So as you can see there, the area shaded in green is the existing National Historic Landmark area, and then the boundary in red is the battlefield core area, which is the core critical part of the properties which was really strongly and directly related with this battlefield itself. And then we wanted to incorporate a little more land on both sides to protect the entire historical context and other landscape. So to talk about the Palmito Ranch Battle, I'm sure that most of you are aware about this areas, but it's actually outside of the city limit, and so it's mostly agricultural and rural landscape. So you still feel the rural, atmosphere compared to other battlefield areas. So I believe there are 5 different battlefields in this county, right? But there is the Sabines battlefield, 2 different on the north side of it, and then Galveston 1 and 2 battlefield. So there are 5 different battlefield sites. Compared to other battlefield areas, this area, the Palmito Ranch, has retained relatively well about the natural component of it, due to the federal preservation areas. And so, like you mentioned, there's no zoning, and most of the areas are protected by the National Wildlife Refuge. With regard to landowners, like I said, there are National Wildlife Refuge and also the Mass Wildlife Management areas, and there are 5 ventures, which is taking place maybe less than 10% of the entire study areas. So what is significant about these areas? Well, first of all, the location of context. It's pretty closer to the border area. There are other battlefield areas in the eastern part of the country, which is settled in the middle of the urbanized area already. So there's a lot of threat and then urbanization pressure. But here in this area, it's really closer to the border, and the Rio Grande plays a really key role. And then the close proximity to federal preservation areas and other battlefields like Alto will also increase the significance of the site. And then symbolic meaning, because that's considered as the last battlefield of the Civil War. well, so to, educate people that this is a really important battlefield site. And also there are really great values in terms of the culture and natural resources retained over the past 150 years. So I guess the last year was the 150th year. And then this is really important moment and historically. And again, compared to other battlefield areas, it has been taken very well, all those resources, and then the topographical changes has not been, very significant here. So, again, the protection will be better preservation area. So as you see, between those images over there, you don't see much changes, right, between those times the photo was taken. Okay? And then, so Michael talked about a little bit more about the NRHP, but there are two different federal programs. One is NRHP, which is History Register, the National Register of History Places, and also National History Landmarks. So both programs are governed and administered by the National Park Service. And then, as with the NHL, NRHP has no obligation to distribute ownership, so it does not affect your ownership at all. There are 90,000 properties listed on NRHP now, and then usually NPS maintains NRHP areas in conjunction with the state history preservation office offices or the tribal preservation offices. It's really important to the local community, so residents of a specific state or to all Americans. So whether you are the universities or NGOs or private ventures, so really important to that particular entity. So as long as you have good history integrity, it's eligible to be listed in NIHP. Whereas at NHL, there's a little bit smaller amount of the properties that is listed in NHL. It's important to history to the entire nation, not just for the local communities or state. So the level of values and history integrity should be exceptionally high enough to be listed in NHL. So if you have a property that is listed as NHL, then you will automatically list in the NHP. So that's kind of gives you, sense of what the differences are. So we actually started this project since August in 2015, and then January 11 through 13 last year, it's exactly the same time last year, we had a field trip here. So main goals was to investigate, landscape features, and then, have some opportunity to consult with the local partners. Rolando and other people really helped us. And then the result of that was we actually had a better ideas, a better understanding about the site, and then just identified what the threats are that is evident and also emerging in this phase. And also we actually brought the GPS and tried to record some point of the location that we thought would be important to preserve. And also gain the contextual site understanding from many different aspects, and also mapped out the location of history significant using ArcGIS, which is spatially expressive, tool. So as you can see on this map, we actually, went through all these areas from the Land West, starting from the Brownsville city, all the way to the east, facing the Gulf of Mexico. And so let's try to cover the entire study area and proposed project site. And so our initial impression of the site was the landscape are lots of approximations of the terrain and landscape present during the Battle of the Palmito Ranch. And then north boundary of the NRHP is State Highway 4, which is Boca Chica Boulevard. And then development is somehow restricted within the current boundary due to federal wildlife refuge holdings. But then we still saw some, border patrols near us whenever you are just heading to the east. There were 4 types of interpretive signage in the Looping Audio Tour. I don't know if you have heard about the audio thing, if it works or not, but I just inserted. Yeah, I actually, let's see if it works. Maybe the sound doesn't work in here, so, but but I actually had the audio file. So if you're interested, and I can just send it to you. But so there's a location that will give you interpretive information. If you're a first visitor to this site, that will be really helpful. And then most of the existing and proposed NIH areas are characterized by open, peaceful, vegetable areas, along with some private homes and ranches. Major geographic and topographical features are intact enough to appreciate the battle time. There are noticeable indications that in the cultural and political integrity of the battlefield right away. So we actually categorize the threat that we identified into several factors. One was the urban growth. It may not be very significant for now, but we see that the very eastern periphery of Brownsville is actually planned to expand the manufacturing zones. Correct me if I'm wrong from the Brownsville city. And so actually the commercial activities is taking place in the main corridor following on Texas State 4 and other corridors along the line. So you may see some of those commercial contracts along the Oklahoma road right there. But if it continues to grow toward the eastern side of the area, then we'll be just touch the west boundary of the protect area. So we just wanted to keep an eye out in how we want to deal with these potential growth approaching from the west side. There is infrastructure construction. So Brian really has to understand what is going on in the north part of the area. So it is not really inside of the project areas, but there is significant influence that may be impact on the integrity of the site. And then, as you may all know, there is a commercial spacecraft launching facilities. So we didn't say anything before the field trip, but during the field trip time, we realized there is a fence which was pretty new. So they just recently erected fences to construct some container or something to prepare for their facilities. And then this is a commercial, activities, and then there may be, little or few ways to address that. But what are the impact, what are the potential ramification of doing this will be definitely the one that we need to consider from the, comprehensive perspectives. So we looked at the environmental impact statement report. It actually comprises of 3 different really big reports. And it's really thoroughly investigated, but we didn't see that the information that was in there is not really capturing the truth of those battlefield sites. And there is some indication about there will be less influence on the wildlife and then environmental sustainability. And then the viewshed as well. So they just recognize a little bit of influence, but not much. But we don't know yet what will be the impact in the long run. So that will be another threat, because that will maybe attract more visitors, and that may cause the blocking the park area for the days that they would like to experiment with the facilities. It may not be very significant or maybe considered as minor impact, but in the climate change issues and the flooding issues, because this whole area, the entire area, this is within the 100-year floodplain zone. And then the restriction and the loss of the district features may arise from the combined impact of extreme weather events. So we see some markers and some indicative signage there. If we have a really heavy, rainfall, although I know that there's a really heavy drought in these years. But as we see 10 years old or 40 years old, 50-year-old, even a 100-year-old, they're looking out into the future, how are you going to prepare to these potential vulnerability? So how we wanted to make a resiliency in these areas would be also key. So this map just shows, the coverage of those 100-year floodplain, which most of the project areas are part of that. You don't have to see the text here, but we actually had a really simple COCO analysis. So what are the key terrain and what are the observation features, what are the cover and the concealment features are, and obstacles and evidence of global approach and the visual. So we wanted to get the telegraph road from the National Park Services, but it was a bit hard, to get the real hard copies. And then if you have any information or stories, that would be pretty critical for us to understand and investigate further. Because right now we have a limited, resources. And so if we want to go the next step, that will be pretty essential for us to work with that. So here are a couple of landscape features we identified and observed while we are doing the field trip. So I'm sure that most of you are already know this, but the Palmito Hill is the key features. I know we have an owner of the property, and I guess we have a really good audience here, including the city and then property owner and then the national federal agencies. And I guess there's one person from the building committee workshop. Is there Jessica here? No. Okay, so no, not you. So yeah, I just got our ISVP from the building committee workshop, which is the design firm, and they showed a really strong interest to engage with this project. So maybe that will be a part of the next step, I think. And then the foreground NHL site. So we just passed the fence, and then we were able to get into the area, and then also looking at some historical picture there. But the foreground is the last extant defining feature of the Palmito Ranch Battle in the city, which is preserved on the golf course. Believe it or not, it was closed last year because people thought that if you want to go around, then you have to be out of the U.S. because that's Mexico facing borderland. So they thought that the customers of those course was not having a right to that. So it was out of business now. And then what's really amazing about this area when we have to incorporate the very end portion of those areas will be to include the coastal dune field. So this is the view of the Gulf of Mexico from the vertical point. So you see that there's a lot of beautiful ecological values, the dunes area. So there's a seagull nesting site there. So if something happens, if you just open the door for future development, then it may be gone. So now the question is that because this is a battlefield protection grant, so should we preserve only for the areas that flooded are shaped, or do we need to expand our appreciation a little bit further to preserve the entire landscape in the context of the preservation of the area? The Rio Grande, the international border area, so you see the really beautiful scenery and viewshed, and then if there's any factors or drivers that may be shown in the viewshed, like the one that you see here, there's a high-rise condominium in the South Central area, and also increasing the number of industrial areas in the port of Brownsville, I guess. So there is some areas that I think you will keep an eye on. So like I said, the main purpose of this grant is actually simply expand the NRHP areas, just north and south of Highway 4 from the Brownsville Ship Channel to the west, and then also doing an interface to the east, and then so expansion of the NRHP boundary up to the Chica Bay area will contribute to history and cultural tourism, as well as individual protection and beach access. So this is one of the outputs. So we are not going to nominate this stuff, but we are going to produce enough information to be used to register with the National Register, which will be done by NPS. So part of the output was the map-based visualization for the story map. It will just contain the historical information and some photos and landscape inventories in the point and the focus areas. So I'm just going to show you. I don't know if the internet is still working. So we're still working on this. We don't have so we don't have the platform yet. But I just wanted to show you the examples of the story map. So if you just go down here, there's a battlefield of the civil wall. So